Rings of Saturn, written by Matthew Farmer, narrated by Henry Corba Babcock. Chapter 1. Kathy. If Kathy could get to the lamp across the room, bite off the plug, and swallow it, she could save the world. She couldn't, though. Not right now. The black was closing in on her. That wasn't a metaphor. Her peripheral vision pulsed with black, her vision narrowing into a tunnel. Deep in that blackness, a light flickered as if from a fire, phasing in and out of reality. A kaleidoscope of light and dark only she could see. Kathy could feel the burn of that firelight in her throat. If the fire closed in her vision, she knew that was the end, and not just for her. But that wasn't all of it. Tunnel vision hadn't landed her in the hospital. It was day 2 at St. Mary of the Angels Psychiatric Wellness Center. Neither Kathy nor her mother had talked the previous day as they got out of the car and met the orderlies at the door. They put her in a wheelchair. Kathy was capable of walking, but policy was policy, she guessed. Once inside, her new doctor and 2 orderlies assigned to her introduced themselves. The smaller orderly approached her to grab her wheelchair handles. Kathy had been saving the planet by swallowing things for years, and she was an efficient machine at spotting the right objects. As the orderly got close, she grabbed the cap off the pen in his front shirt pocket in a well-practiced motion and swallowed it, all in under a second. Chaos and shouting ensued. After that incident, they strong-armed her into her room and got her into her bed. They strapped her torso and legs down tight, though she could still wiggle them. Her head was free, and they left her with some arm movement, though she couldn't reach her mouth with her hand. After restraining her, they removed anything they thought she could swallow: the pen and paper on the desk, the TV remote, and even the Bible in the drawer. Immediately after, Kathy heard the doctor reprimanding the orderlies outside her room. He chided them for being so careless around such a high-risk patient. They would have to be more careful in the future. And they were. The rest of the day went well for everyone. She had bought time with the pen cap. The world not being in immediate danger, she was calm enough to ask for the TV to be turned on. When the men brought in her meals, everyone was pleasant. They held the fork, but they let Kathy hold the hard plastic cup and drink on her own. It was either law or hospital policy that Kathy be allowed to get some exercise for at least an hour a day. Twice that first day, the 2 men led her down an emptied hallway into an outside courtyard. Kathy walked into the center of a little flower garden and sat on the ground, watching the birds and the faraway passing cars. It was nice to be outside, even briefly. But all that was yesterday. She had saved the world yesterday. Not that anyone was grateful. Not that anyone had ever been grateful. Today was a new day. There was a new looming threat of annihilation to deal with. And to stop it, Kathy had to get to that plug. "Kathleen Werner," a man said as he entered Kathy's room. "My name is Dr. Rich Tamar. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes." He closed the door behind him gently, as if he didn't want to make any noise. He pulled a seat up to her bed, near her head. He sat down and, after contemplating her in silence for a long minute, said, "I hate to see you like this." Dr. Tamar pulled a paper and clipboard out of a plastic holder attached to the side of Kathy's bed and appeared to read it. "This is not your first stay at the hospital, correct? A month when you were 15, the majority of a year after high school, and now your condition is waxing again rather than waning. According to this, you suffer from schizophrenic hallucinations and obsessive-compulsive disorder, coupled with aggressive pica. And, oh dear, it says that you tried to swallow a fork." He looked up from the paper. Again, Kathy didn't speak. "Surgery in the ER to remove it and immediate transfer here. Well, I'll let you in on a secret, Kathleen. They know schizophrenia is an incorrect diagnosis." Kathy coughed. "They do?" "They do. What's more, I am inclined to believe this is all a misdiagnosis. Everything on this sheet. Why don't you tell me the truth?" "Why do you think they're wrong?" Dr. Tamar examined the paper for a moment, then said, "You've tried several dozen different medications, all to no effect. Schizophrenics don't have one consistent hallucination that they have some sort of control over. If the hospitals are so puzzled, I'm more inclined to believe you, Kathleen. Or do you prefer Kathy?" Kathy did her best to shrug with her arms strapped down. "My mom calls me Kathleen." For the first time, Dr. Tamar's face brightened a little, the corners of his mouth turning up. "That isn't exactly a helpful answer." "Kathy is fine." "Kathy, then. So tell me, Kathy, What's going on?
I see. They're like monsters.
Kathy looked at his face, expecting to see the same expression she had seen on 100 doctors' faces before. Instead, Dr. Tamar just nodded in a go-on gesture.
And nobody else sees them, and I don't know why. It's like they come in from a different reality or a parallel universe, something like that.
The words were rushing out of her, trapped in for so long. She wanted to get this speech over with before it made her feel like she actually belonged in the hospital.
And they're not fully real, they're like ghosts or something.
Dr. Tamar nodded along while Kathy talked. When she was finished, he said, "This has gotten worse as time goes on. These beings reveal themselves more and more frequently." Kathy nodded. "And it says here that, well, it is rather dismissive on the page, but you say when you swallow certain objects you can banish these beings."
Yeah,
Kathy said. This was always the sticking point. The hallucinations weren't what landed her in the hospital. "That's interesting," Dr. Tamar said mostly to himself. "Why would that work?"
I have no idea,
Kathy said. What sorts of items work the best?"
Oh,
Kathy said. She had never been asked that.
I don't know. Whatever is available. I like pen caps.
Dr. Tamar was nodding, automatically, not looking at anything, lost in thought. After a moment, he said, "The ones with the little stainless steel clip."
Yeah,
Kathy said. A heavy silence. Then Dr. Tamar stood up and placed a hand over Kathy's forehead, as if he were checking her temperature. "This was most illuminating. We'll talk tomorrow, Kathy." And he left the room. Some time later, it was so hard to tell in her sterile white room, the orderly from the day before poked his head through the door. Kathy had been too upset at the time to remember his name.
Hey, Kathy.
Coffee or orange juice with breakfast? Kathy didn't say anything. How informed was this man? Did he know she wasn't schizophrenic? Was he part of the decision to lock her in a room, strap her to a bed and force pills down her throat that she didn't want, and take her phone and clothes away, and trap her in a building with insane people that scared the shit out of her? "Uh-oh," he said, stepping into the room and closing the door. "I've seen that look before." He sat down at the foot of her bed. "Kathy, I know this situation isn't ideal. I know you want to go, but I'm not your enemy." Kathy jerked her arm up, hard and fast. The restraint around her wrist hit its limit, and the whip crack of the leather smacking against her metal bed frame bounced off every surface in the room, making her point for her. In the silence that followed, Kathy's eyes bounced between the orderlies and the plug in the wall. It felt like her throat was on fire. "All right, Kathy. All right. Let's say orange juice with breakfast." A few minutes later, he came back with his partner, holding a plastic tray with food on it. They set up the little swiveling arm desk that was attached to the bed over Kathy's stomach and set her tray on it. Oatmeal and toast, next to a mug of orange juice. They grabbed the spoon to keep it away from her and unlocked her hands. "All right, ready to eat?" She didn't say anything, just looked at their front shirt pockets where she had grabbed the pen cap yesterday, then surveyed the rest of them. "Nothing today, Kathy," said the shorter orderly. "Have some toast." She still didn't say anything. She had told these people 1,000,000 times what was wrong. If they knew she wasn't schizophrenic and were doing this to her anyway, then she was done talking. "Maybe it's too early?" the shorter man wondered aloud. "Maybe," the taller man mulled it over. After a few beats, he picked up the oatmeal and spoon in the paper bowl. This left only the hard plastic tray with a piece of toast on it and the ceramic mug of orange juice. He took her left arm and put it back in the restraint, but left her right free. "Eat this when you're ready. We'll be back in a little bit, but please, Kathy, you need to at least eat the toast." The orderlies left her alone. She considered her free arm. For some reason, her vision fluttered while she looked at it, illusory images dancing in her peripheral, at the very edges of her perception, and the burning in her throat intensified. She knew what would make it stop. When she looked at the lamp plug, the burning sensation dulled, and her vision steadied a little. Kathy took her free arm and reached over to her restrained arm. It was locked in some sort of ratchet strap that only pulled one way. The release mechanism was out of her reach, and even if she could reach it, it had a lock on it. If she gave the restraint some slack, it loosened on her wrist the tiniest bit. She held her hand down a little, then tried to push the strap over her palm with her free hand. She had to snake her arm around the tray of food they left on top of her, and she wasn't getting the best possible angle. Time started to feel weird, and she lost track of how long she had been pushing on the strap. But it was an inch or two up her hand now, under the fattest part of her thumb. She heard voices. Someone, maybe the orderlies, leaving the room next to hers. She paused for a moment, listening. They went into the room across the hall. Not much time left now. Her throat was on fire, and her vision was a strange tunnel centered on the strap. She started shoving again. If she could get over this last bump, her arm would be free. She could just get a better angle. Before she knew what she was doing, she heard the tray of food clatter to the floor, shoved out of the way by her elbow. The mug shattered on the tile floor, the sound reverberating in the silent room. Footsteps came hard and fast. "Jesus, Kathy," the taller orderly said as he came into the room. "I'm sorry," Kathy tried to say. Her voice came out all warbly and strange. "I didn't mean to knock it over." "That isn't—" The shorter man took a breath before continuing. "Kathy, that isn't the point. We can clean the food up." The taller man went over to Kathy's left wrist. She noticed for the first time that the skin of her wrist was red, raw, and bleeding in several areas. "God damn it, Kathy, it doesn't have to be so bad for you." He brandished her own hand at her as he said it. "Do you want both hands locked all the time? It doesn't have to be so bad." "Let's take her for a walk," the shorter orderly said. Let's try to reset." The taller man unlocked her left arm. "We'll need to clean this up first," he said. The shorter orderly ran off to get some alcohol and a bandage. "What are we going to do with you?" asked the taller orderly. He let the question hang in the air until the other man returned with the supplies. They cleaned up her wrist. "I got someone to clean the room up while we're gone," the shorter man said. "All right, Kathy, let's try to save the rest of this day. Let's go outside for a while." He loosened the restraints on her feet and freed her torso. They held her hand while she stood up, and Kathy vanished from the room. Chapter 2. Wes. It was 4 p.m. on a Saturday, which meant Wes and Jamie were both drunk. Wes had 3 whiskey and cokes, and Jamie had the rest of the bottle propped up in a nest of dirty clothes on the couch next to him. Jamie was kicking Wes's ass at Super Smash Bros., using one of Marth's combos over and over again. "Hey," Wes said, "do you ever get the feeling, or do you ever think the house is like, I don't know, do you ever think it's completely fucking haunted?" Jamie finished for him. That was exactly what he was going to ask. Wes looked over at him and, "Hey, are you just pressing one fucking button?" He was mashing the A button. "It's your fault for using slow-ass Ganondorf." "Next round, I'm picking Marth, and I'll see how you like it." Wes focused back on the game and said, "So, have you seen anything recently?" "Like, a movie? I started watching this show on Netflix. It's—" "No, idiot. We were talking about the house being, haunted, I guess is what we're going with," Wes said. "Oh, yeah, sorry," Jamie said, his eyes swimming in liquor. "What was the question again?" Light tried to creep in the window around the blinds behind Jamie's head and shimmered off Wes's glass of whiskey. "A sign from the heavens that I need to be more drunk for this conversation," Wes thought. "What type of weird shit have you seen?" Wes asked, reaching for his drink. Jamie looked at him, drew in a breath, and puffed out his cheeks, then blew it out while looking back at the TV. "Here, pick your guy for this round," he said. The previous match had ended with Jamie killing Wes 5 times and Wes killing him once. Really, Jamie had fallen off the map on his own, but the game still awarded that kill to Wes, so he took it. He picked Marth and Jamie picked Toon Link. The match began, and he started running at Jamie, beating the A button like he caught it breaking into his car. Jamie started skipping around the map, tossing bombs in the air seemingly at random. Somehow, Wes ran into almost every one of them, losing 2 lives in under a minute. "God damn it, how are you doing that?" Wes looked at him. Jamie had actual drool coming out of his mouth. "If you press down and B, it throws a bomb." "I know how to take out the bombs, Jamie. I meant... You never answer my question. Look,
weird shit's been going on in the house for like a week now. Man, I saw like a... Well, you know I don't... Oh, motherfucker! He lost his fifth and final life to Jamie's goddamn bomb barrage. He threw the controller onto the couch, which bounced and knocked his drink off the coffee table. Fuck you, and fuck this game, Wes said. He picked up the controller from the puddle of whiskey and melted ice. Want to play another round?
No, I have to work in like 6 hours. I need to go to sleep, Jamie said.
You're approaching blackout. Are you even going to be functional in 6 hours? Wes said. Jamie was, in defiance of anyone's better judgment, the night manager at the hardware store down the street. Wes was an accountant. A real goddamn accountant with a college degree and everything. Jamie made more money than he did.
I have a Red Bull in the fridge for when I wake up.
Oh, then you're fine. He hesitated. Jamie, have you seen anything weird or not? He gave Wes the same look as before, but this time said,
You first.
Wes surveyed his face. There was genuine worry in it. Okay, well, the other night, I think it was Tuesday. Wes was lying in bed. It was late, and he had work in the morning, but he had gone down a rabbit hole looking at different types of tanks from World War II. He was considering clicking on a banner ad for a big-ass replica of a German Panzer tank. Staring at his phone above his head, he started disassociating from his waking thoughts. Time for sleep. Wes went to roll over but was stopped before he moved an inch. The blankets wouldn't move at all, like they were made of concrete poured over him. But he could move his head and arm since they were out of the covers. He craned his neck to look at his alarm clock. 2:12 a.m. What must have been 10 minutes passed as he stared at the clock. 2:12 a.m. He looked back at his phone and touched the screen. Nothing. When he tried to pull it closer to his face, it didn't budge. He let go of it, and the phone hung in midair. Then, out of the corner of his eye, something popped into existence in his doorway. It was a thing. It was humanish, but way too big, with gray, corpse-like skin, and a tail that trailed along the ground for 5 or 6 feet. It seemed almost hazy, as if Wes was viewing it through a sandstorm. It made no sound. It just jerked and twisted around in the doorway as if something was hurting it. Wes watched with a detached interest, not even afraid. This was too far out of the realm of normality to even register as fear. Until it lunged at him. He wasn't sure why he did it, but he tried to grab his phone and close the tab. I guess I didn't want the news to say I died looking at Nazi tanks, Wes said. Jamie seemed to sober up a little from listening to the story. Anyway, when I went back for the phone, I could move it again. I could move everything again, and the, monster, I suppose we'll call it, was gone. I know that sounds like a dream. Wes trailed off. He looked at Jamie and saw wheels spinning behind his red-rimmed eyes. But I know it wasn't a dream. I swear it was real. So, yeah. Have you seen anything like that? They sat together for a long moment, listening to the idle video game music on the TV. Jamie was nodding to himself. Then, Jamie looked over at Wes, said, "Okay," and got up and walked down the hallway toward his bedroom. "Wait, where are you going?" Wes said, following him. "Bed," Jamie said, standing in his bedroom doorway. "But be ready in the morning when I get off work." "Why?" Then, Jamie said the 4 most terrifying words that could have come out of his mouth. "I have a plan." Chapter 3. Klein. Devin Patterson sat on the floor in the corner of his parents' bedroom closet, holding a Smith & Wesson 500. The gun was cartoonish in his small hands. He was 8 years old. As soon as his eyes adjusted to the dark, Devin spotted a box on top of the wire shelving. He sat on the floor for a while before he gathered the courage to stand up and grab the box. When he opened the box and pulled out the gun, a little color returned to his cheeks. Once he figured out how to open the gun and slide in 5 of the bullets he found in the box, his shoulders untensed a little. He thumbed the hammer back and placed his finger on the trigger. The gun went off, blowing a hole in the closet door big enough for Devin to stick his finger through.
The gun flew out of his hand, missing his head by inches, and struck the wall behind him so hard that it left a small dent. After a moment, Devon gathered himself. Light from the ceiling fixture in his parents' bedroom shone through the hole in a perfect beam. He pulled his feet closer to his body to keep them out of the range of that light. Devon picked the gun up and thumbed the hammer back once again. He had learned his lesson about the trigger, though. His finger stayed on the slim oval of metal that surrounded it. The butt of the gun rested on his knee, which he had drawn up close to his face, making himself as small as possible. An immeasurable amount of time passed before Devon heard muffled chatter in the other room. He tucked the gun closer, put the sights up to his eye and aimed at the doorknob. With the weight of a feather, he put his finger on the trigger. Nothing happened. His breathing became erratic. Devon waited, aiming an oversized novelty revolver at the unknown. Lieutenant Margaret Klein watched all of this from the police station in town. She had been waiting for the call from the neighbor, which she knew would come at 4:25 a.m., a full hour after the neighbor had heard what she thought might be gunshots. When the phone rang, she allowed the dispatcher to take the call. The dispatcher sent Deputy Nathaniel Van Diver out on a wellness check to the Patterson residence. The Pattersons were the area's wealthiest business owners, owning multiple mineral mines across the state. The closest one, a sulfur mine, employed a tenth of the town's population. Klein wasn't a beat cop and never went on something as trivial as wellness checks. But when Nathaniel geared up to leave the station, Klein insisted she go with him. Nathaniel didn't argue, not with Lieutenant Klein. They arrived at the Patterson residence at 4:57 a.m. Nathaniel pulled into the driveway, lights and sirens off, Klein in the passenger seat. They got out and Nathaniel knocked on the front door. No response. He knocked again, this time declaring loudly and clearly, "Mr. Patterson? Wyoming PD. Mr. Patterson, are you home?" Klein closed her eyes and could see the blood in the bedroom from where she stood on the front porch step, a fact that she kept to herself. "Let's check around back," Klein said. She led them through the flawless side yard, around to the endless expanse that was the Pattersons' backyard. They found the back door unlocked. The back door opened into the kitchen, which looked well used but clean. It was nothing like the scene of a crime. "Mr. Patterson," Nathaniel tried again. Still, no response. They pressed forward into the living room, which also looked fine to Nathaniel. Nathaniel looked at his partner with raised eyebrows, a look that said, "What are we doing here?" He would soon find out. The sight of the gore was horrific, not that Nate could see it yet. Sick of the song and dance, Klein said, "Let's check the bedrooms," gesturing upstairs with a jerk of her head. "You don't want to clear the rest of the downstairs? If they're here, they'll still be in bed." "You want to barge in on a sleeping couple after we've sort of broken into their house?" Nathaniel asked. Klein spread her hands in response. "Okay, boss. Let's go." As they started for the stairs, Klein drew her gun, a performative gesture. Halfway up the stairs, Klein heard Nate say, "Oh, fuck," and draw his gun as well. He had finally smelled the gore. At the top of the stairs, Klein led them left, toward where she knew the smell originated. She saw it first, peering in from the doorway. She took a step back and gestured for Nate to take a look. She hated to subject him to this, but that was the job. "Oh my God," Nathaniel said. He turned away, back toward Klein. His voice came out strange when he asked, "Sweep the rest of the floor before we go in?" Klein agreed, knowing full well it was pointless. The house was big, but not so big. They swept it in under 3 minutes. Nathaniel emerged from the child's bedroom and said, "Nothing in the kids' room. We need to go make sure there's only 2 bodies. Could be a kidnapping." The bed was a gruesome sponge that had sopped up a lot of the blood, but still more poured onto the carpet and pooled under the matching nightstands. The Pattersons' faces were portraits of brutality. Later investigation would reveal that the murderer had used .357 hollow points at point-blank range, an investigation which Klein could view from where she stood. Staring into the horrific hole in Mr. Patterson's face, Nathaniel said, "They're so rich. Why didn't they live in a gated community?" Klein shot a sidelong glance at Nate,
amused by such a strange question at such a strange time. No rules out in the wilderness, I guess. Guy like this wouldn't like a homeowners association. Nathaniel looked at the blood on the bed and the floor. No rules indeed. They stepped around the room, careful to avoid contaminating any potential evidence. Klein noticed a hole in the side of the dresser, about the size of a bullet. She considered the placement of the hole and opened the corresponding drawer. She rummaged around for a second and pulled out a mangled but still huge bullet. Look at this. What's that, like a .44 Magnum? Is that what did them, you think? Maybe. And probably, she said. She made a show of glancing around the room and noticed another bullet hole, this time in the closet door. In fact, it seemed to line up with the hole in the dresser. Nate, she said, pointing at the closet door. She saw Nathaniel do the math in his head. He started toward it to investigate, Klein following behind him into the closet where she knew Devon was still hiding, aiming the 500 straight at them. When the door creaked open, Devon pulled the trigger. The bullet ripped through the air. The gun, once again, flew out of Devon's lax grip. Devon had the gun right up to his eye, all the better to aim, so he took the considerable recoil full in the face. He jerked backward and slumped against the wall, teetering on the edge of consciousness. Nathaniel hadn't had time to take in the situation. He had opened the door, and the giant Hornaday round pierced his chest, sending a shockwave through him that stopped his heart. He collapsed outside the closet door. As far as friends go, Klein supposed she would have counted Nathaniel among hers, as much of a friend as she knew how to have. She had heard the shot, even felt a ghost pressure of the bullet in her chest. Nathaniel fell at her feet, dead. The 500 round ejected out of his back and smacked harmlessly against the wood-paneled wall behind him. She saw that he wouldn't have enough time to feel any panic. She had seen it years ago. It was as clean a death as anyone could hope for. Cops are trained not to peek their heads around corners. That's how you get shot in the face. But Klein could cheat. Knowing it was safe, she leaned to the left, around the doorway, to get a glimpse of Nate's killer, to see with her eyes what she had seen in her mind for years. Inside, she saw Devon leaning back against the wall, his face turning red where the gun must have smacked him. She stepped over Nathaniel and faced the boy. His eyes focused on her for a fraction of a second and felt his sense of relief at seeing a cop. An officer of the peace. Someone tasked with keeping the balance. Klein surveyed the boy and took him in. She saw that he was somewhat spoiled, not surprising for a millionaire's son. She saw that he had felt fear all night, but in an abstract way. The night's events still didn't seem real to him. She saw how he had woken up to his mother screaming, heard a gunshot, heard his mother scream even louder, then heard a second, more terrible gunshot. She saw how he had gotten out of bed, started his way down the hall to his parents' room, and then stopped when he saw the figure of a man holding a rifle in the hallway. Then Klein saw what Devon didn't, what Devon couldn't. Klein saw the angel that was using the man as a puppet. The lights that composed the angel's body leaned into the man's ear, driving his decisions just as it had driven his decision to kill the boy's parents. In Klein's mind, she saw the man looking at the boy, his body all but convulsing with the input. Devon ran back inside his bedroom and slammed the door shut. Some shred of something that at one point might have been called decency won out in the man, and despite the angel's pressure, Devon heard his footsteps go right past his door and down the stairs. She saw Devon gaze upon what was left of his parents' faces, then dive into the closest safety he could find, the bedroom closet. She saw him find the gun that killed Nate. She saw what kind of man he would be after tonight. She saw the mines he would manage, following in his late father's footsteps. She saw what she could uncover in a mine, in sulfur-laden earth where the sun doesn't shine. Is a hurricane evil? It depends on your perspective. From humanity's standpoint, all a hurricane represents is destruction. Homes are wiped away, towns and roads destroyed, and thousands, only thousands, if you're lucky, die. But from the perspective of the Earth, they're an antibody, chipping away at a parasite that's killing its host. Should you curse a hurricane?
You can, but it doesn't make any difference. Klein considered her dead friend behind her. She considered the unconscious Devon in front of her. If Azrael couldn't do his part on his own, Klein would have to pick up the slack. She took Nate's cold hand, still on his pistol. She aimed with it, careful not to touch any metal, and used Nate's finger to shoot Devon in the forehead. She got the dispatch radio to ask for help because there had been a horrible accident. There was an officer shot, and in a final reflex he'd shot a round of his own. That's step 1 down then. Now, she just had to wait for step 2. Lieutenant Margaret Klein was 33 years old. She'd been 33 years old for quite some time now. She was human, but that was a technicality. Chapter 4. Wes.
"This is your plan?"
Wes asked. He was sitting in the passenger seat of Jamie's car outside the gun store, about 20 minutes from their house.
"Are you sure this is a good idea?"
"It's fine. We can just look around, come on." The building was small. It looked like a repurposed tractor-trailer from the outside, a plain rectangle of sheet metal with a guns sign out front, but the inside was nice enough. A gruff-looking guy greeted them with an uninterested glare from behind the counter.
"Fuck you too, Bunny."
They walked around for a minute looking at guns behind glass cabinets. Wes saw signs that said things like 9x19mm Parabellum 6+1 and 7.62 by 39mm 30+1 gas-operated. They confused the hell out of him. This method wasn't going to make him any more of an informed buyer.
"Maybe I should just buy the biggest one."
"What can I help you boys with today?" the clerk asked.
"I'm not sure,"
Wes said.
"Neither of us knows anything about guns."
"Well, did you have something in mind?"
"Something big?"
he floundered. "Something big. What do you need it for exactly?"
"Home defense,"
Wes said, having heard that phrase on the news before. At the exact same time, Jamie said, "Hunting, possibly large creatures." Wes glared at him. He didn't seem the least bit deterred. The clerk gave them a half-amused smile and said, "Sounds like you boys want a 12-gauge. He turned and walked to the far side of the counter, pulling a gun off the wall. On his way back, he racked the slide and looked at something on the inside of the gun. Back in front of them, he held it out, saying, "Remington 870, same model the police use. Inexpensive, too." Jamie reached for the gun, put it up against his shoulder to test it out, and absent-mindedly aimed it at the clerk's head. "Jesus Christ, son!" the clerk said, slapping the barrel away, then yanking it out of Jamie's hands. After a pretty impressive glare, he handed the gun to Wes. Wes tried to mimic what the clerk had done earlier with the slide, as if he wasn't a complete idiot. It didn't budge.
"Fuck it. Could you show me how to work it, please?"
He didn't seem put off by the request. "This button here releases the slide. That's why you couldn't rack it. This here is the safety. Push that in when you're ready to fire. You'll slide your shells into the tube here. Put the butt up against your armpit, rack a new slug after every time you pull the trigger. That's about it. Shotguns are simple."
"Thanks,"
Wes said, taking the gun back from him. He surveyed it, managing to test the slide this time. It seemed fine. He had no point of reference. "We'll take it," Jamie said.
"We will?"
Wes asked. Jamie turned to him.
"He said it was the right gun, and the food truck with the pulled pork closes in like 35 minutes.
He turned to the clerk and said,
"What's the strongest bullet you sell for this gun?"
The clerk took that in for a moment. "You boys aren't going to make me regret selling you this, are you?" Wes said,
"I assure you, sir, my friend here is just an idiot."
The clerk seemed to accept that answer. Then Wes added,
"All the same, what is your strongest bullet?"
Probably eager to get them out of his store, he turned to the wall of boxes behind him. He picked a green box and turned back to Wes. "For home defense, Winchester double-aught buckshot," he said, placing the box in front of him. Then he looked at Jamie, his voice taking on a sardonic tone. "For big creature hunting." He turned and grabbed a red box this time. "Federal deer slugs. Should I ring this all up?"
"Please,"
Jamie said. The clerk looked at Jamie, then at Wes. "The gun goes in your name."
"That's fine."
Wes said. Here, fill this out. The clerk handed him a stack of paperwork. What's all this? Wes asked. Gotta call the FBI. Make sure I can sell to you. Is that necessary? I know Jamie here can be. Nothing personal. It's state law. Jamie said, Hurry up and fill it out. If we have to get sandwiches from the grocery store instead of pulled pork, my whole day is going to be thrown off. 12 minutes and almost $600 later, they sped off toward the food truck that sat on the route back to their house. Chapter 5. Wes. Wes saw the girl appear on the side of the road. She didn't pop out from behind a bush or something. They were driving on a dead road with empty fields on either side of them. Wes was fiddling with the shotgun safety switch in the passenger seat, zoning out, looking through the windshield. Ahead of him, maybe 50 yards, a young woman in an ugly blue dress came into existence. She looked confused and took another step away from the road, away from the car. Pull over, he said, but Jamie was already slowing down. Did she? I saw it, he said, knowing what Jamie was going to ask. They came to a stop a little way past her and looked back to see if she was coming toward them. She stood right where she was, looking at the car with scared, prey animal eyes. Jamie put the car in reverse and backed up to her. Wes rolled his window down and said, Hi. This may sound weird, but did you just quantum leap here or something? That wasn't a dress. It was a hospital gown. Did she run away from a surgery? Where even was the closest hospital? She looked at Wes and saw that he had a shotgun between his feet. She gasped and took several steps back, tripping and nearly falling, but catching herself so it looked like she did a weird curtsy at him. He said, Oh no, we just bought this. She looked from his eyes to the shotgun, radiating distrust. I mean, it's not for you. That didn't work either. Look, we're not going to shoot you. Jamie said, Hey, there was never any chance of me shooting her. You're the one that wouldn't put the shotgun in the trunk when we left. Shut up, Wes said. He looked back at the girl. Here, look. He held the gun up higher and showed her the price tag still threaded through the trigger guard. We're coming home from the gun store now. We had to get one because there's, something in our house. Your house? She said, finally speaking. Are other people still alive? Wes shot a quick glance at Jamie, then back at the girl. Yeah? What? Sorry, nothing, never mind. I didn't mean to say that. There's like an animal in your house or something? Wes was going to say something along the lines of, yeah, a raccoon, or possums won't stop fucking in our crawl space. Jamie beat him to it. We have a bit of a demon infestation back at the house. She took a step toward Wes, asking, Is it gray? Does it have a tail? Wes looked at her for a long second. She looked back. Yeah, he said. Yeah, it did. He was starting to get freaked out. In the middle of the day like this, it was easy to forget what he had seen in his bedroom that night. He and Jamie were being stupid. They had both been doing too many drugs the past few weeks, and Wes had hallucinated. And they were out buying a gun because it was fun, and they had a Sunday afternoon to kill. But now it looked like their paranoia might have been justified after all. The crazy girl on the side of the road said so. Huh, was all Jamie could manage. Wes raised his eyebrows at him, silently asking the question. Jamie shrugged and gave a slight nod of his head. Back to the girl, Wes said, Where did you come from just now? We saw you teleport, I guess would be the right word. I don't know. I don't know where I was a minute ago. I don't know how I got out of there. I don't know where I am now. Hey, Jamie interrupted her. Do you like pulled pork? She looked confused. Yeah, I guess. Wes twisted around in his seat, reached behind him, and opened the rear passenger door. Get in,